Now taking to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. And let me say hotel. We're going to add that into the mix because a lot of our listeners are of the African persuasion or Africana studies persuasion, and we don't want to leave out the most important constituency that we have. My name is Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church, and we're located at 8916 South Main Street, and we're worshiping with our sister church, which is the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church, which is pastored by my prayer partner and good friend, the Reverend Dr. Della F. Hollins. And they always say when the charismatics get together, amen, that there's going to be a shouting in the camp. I might have missed. They say when the Baptists and the charismatics get together, there's always going to be a shouting in the camp. This offering, which you are viewing, is a more or less a social commentary, social justice themed, not so much preachified. We can have our moments, but we try to stick to the application. As they say in Africana studies, how does this free us? And so all we are doing is trying to put together the things that will free us. And by us, I mean us people who are non-white. And of course, dare I say it, we black people here in this settler colonialism criminal enterprise called the United States of America. But be that as it may, we press on and we trust that you are having a successful year so far, and we trust you will be more and more successful as the year progresses, all right? And our marching orders come from the 15th chapter of Deuteronomy, and beginning at the 12th verse, where it says, "And if thy brother, an Hebrew man or an Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee and serve thee 12 years, then in the 6th year, amen, thou shalt let him or her go out free from thee. And when thou sendest them out free from thee, thou shalt not let them go away empty." And that is where we part ways with the capitalistic strategy that speaks of survival of the fittest. Of course, God never spoke of any survival of the fittest. From the beginning, it was not so. Every man was sitting on his own vine. As a matter of fact, Adam and Eve had an idyllic community. Of course, that's neither here nor there since they ruined it. But even after that, God made provision. He didn't just throw them out. He placed them out and rewarded them and told them to take possession of the earth and subdue it. And he provided herbs and he provided meat. All they had to do was go get it. Because it was no longer going to be spoon-fed to them as it had been in the idyllic Garden of Eden. And so, but even in the development of biblical history, a lot of us part ways with biblical history because we don't believe that the Bible is a historical book. And that's a valid point. But where we can identify some social leanings, notice that each tribe of the children of Israel was given a sector of land, of a geographical area that was to be all of theirs. There were 12 geographical issuances or distributions. Moses had initially made it, but of course Joshua had to supervise and administer the actual division. But the point is that everybody had land. Everybody could sit on his own vine and on his own fig tree. Mr. Jones didn't have to look with jealousy or envy or longing or desire or covetousness at Mr. Jackson's property, because he had his own. You follow it? So God had made provision. And so when it came to the matter of slavery, and remember, slavery in the Bible was not that slavery that was practiced over here as chattel slavery, where you took a person, a human being, and treated them as being a commodity, as a piece of portable property, which is what chattel meant, that you could pick your property up from here and put it over there and do whatever you wanted with your property, and nobody could gainsay. And that was not the kind of slavery that God sanctioned. If God ever sanctioned slavery, it was not that type of slavery as was practiced here, which was a form of refined cruelty that was sadistic and criminal, to say the least, brutal in its implementation, and very inhumane in its administration, because you had, as we said, reduced a person who was born in the image and had the likeness of God in them, but now you have reduced them from the level of a person to the level of a thing, which is what property is. You can do with your property what you wish. And it took a brutal, bloody effusion of blood in order to break the backbone of chattel slavery here in America. And then, of course, following the conclusion of the Reconstruction, which was, according to W.B. Du Bois, a very prolific and very successful, if it had been allowed to succeed. But, of course, it was hindered because the defeated foe in the South was still nursing their injuries, nursing the grudge. And when they saw their former property now receiving their just due and being treated as human beings and with rights instead of being property in the Constitution, now persons covered by the Constitution, it was too much for them. And so the defeated South, the defeated Southerners, who for all intents and purposes still sympathize with the war, although they had lost the war. And every time they had an opportunity, they sought an opportunity to get back at their former property, as they viewed persons of myself, then they took advantage of it. And since they had been in the politics and the social structure and knew the ins and outs better of course, than the formerly enslaved, then they knew how to undermine this fragile experience of democracy. Remember, democracy in the United States of America was an experiment. Abe Lincoln said, we must prove that popular governance is not an absurdity. We must settle this question now. For all those January 6 people, insurrectionists, whether the minority has a right to overthrow or break up the government anytime they see fit. And if we fail, it will go far to prove the incapacity of the people to govern themselves. All right, so that this democracy, demos, power of the people, demos, the power extends. The government presents or gets its power from the consent of the governed. That's an old Ronald Reagan trope, which he was often fond of quoting. But that's what democracy, with a small d, is. It's the people's power of the people to make the decision. And that is what America has been. We could all say it has not succeeded, but we are in that struggle. We are in that conflict to evolve to a more just and equitable and equal society, which is why some of us must cringe when we hear Dr. Martin Luther King's speech saying, "I have a dream that my 4 children would live in a nation which will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character," in which he was talking about equality under the law and equity under the law. But now the Roberts Court and the revisionists of the Constitution have adopted his speech, but look at what they claim he was intending: a colorblind society, which was not what he was intending. He never mentioned blindness. He was talking about equality under the law and equity, and where everybody would be treated as equals. And I can't get myself excited. And case in point, in the GI Bill coming out of World War II, if the Southerners, if the administrators of the GI Bill had done it, been equitable and fair, then there would have been a need for color blindness, because if you were a soldier, then you were entitled to the benefits of having fought and to receive the benefits that your country were providing. But no, that was not to be. The GI Bill, because it was a federal program, but it had to be, dispensed locally, was in many states, especially the southern states, made a sham of. Bilbo, Rankin, and Eastland, and Stennis, who were the chairman of those boards. They were chairman of the Social Security Board. They were chairman of the GI Bill board, a committee rather, and so they made a stipulation. Okay, federal government, you can dispense this great GI Bill, but it must be locally administered, which meant that if I lived in Mississippi or I lived in Texas, and under the laws of the state of Texas at that time, you think that you are going to get an equal share of the GI Bill as your white counterpart? You must be kidding. You must be naive. Because if Rankin was a arch segregationist before the GI Bill was passed, and he was on the GI Bill committee, he was not going to suddenly have some theophany or epiphany and where he was going to treat everybody right. No. And so that one example shows you the inequities, the disparities, the discrepancies, and the injustice of the GI Bill. Because remember, the biggest thing about the GI Bill was that you could buy a house. You could buy your first house. You could, the government would stand behind you, your loan, and then they had their own underwriting insurance underwriters, so they guaranteed the loan, but they did not guarantee the loan for black people. They only guaranteed it for white people. So that's why you have the suburb situation and the housing situation all across this nation as it is right now. The white people were welcomed with the loans and with the insurance underwriting, because you can't make a mortgage loan unless you can insure it. And so the banks and the lending institutions of that day, and of that which is still now, they welcome and they gladly underwrote the white constituency, but they equally as gladly disenfranchised and bypassed and overlooked the black constituency in that GI Bill dispensation. And if you see the importance of housing, and see the importance of a permanent address, and see the importance of being able to get your first house when you may not have all of that credit worthiness built up. But if you get that first house and you got it guaranteed, well, you can work and pay and struggle to pay for that house and upkeep that house. Well, that's your entry into the American dream, which is really what Dr. King was talking about. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. The American dream was every man would have his own house, a 2-car garage, a chicken in every pot. And that was the original American dream, because they said if it would be hard for a person, an adult, male or female, who owned property, who owned a home in America, to turn against America. And so this is what we are slowly and incrementally, glacially pushing back against, is that early disregard for the value or the worth or the life of the people who were considered colored at that time, Negro, which was a pejorative, and black, which was a real pejorative when I was born. And that just shows you how things flip. Now, Negro is the pejorative, and the preferred superlative is black or Afro-American or African-American. And that's a story for another time. But now, as we get to our last 15, 20 minutes or 10 minutes as we go, police brutality against our black people has not abated. It didn't abate in slavery when it had the sanction of the plantation owners, and it has not abated since then. Our houses are no-knock warrant houses. We, just like in slavery, we cannot be secure in our persons, in our homes, from unreasonable search and seizure, whether it's the Ku Klux Klan or whether it's the police. Your house can be invaded, and you can be carted off to jail. It's like we are still combatants in a war zone. Those of you that were in the war, and you were in the Vietnam War, you know how you kicked over hooches and busted in doors, and you that were in Iraq and Afghanistan. You know how we just took over people's houses. Oh, they better not say anything, because we had the sanction of the UN. We could just shoot pell-mell. Well, if you are on the streets in a city in America, you should not be governed by the United Nations rules of fire. You just don't go in a man's house and shoot up everything and let God sort it out. You see, let God determine it. No, that's not the way a civilized nation should operate. But that is precisely how it operates in too many of our black communities, in our South Centrals of every state and every city where we are the majority demographic. And so Amir Locke, the officers executed a no-knock warrant, which means they didn't have to knock, and they did not have to announce that the police is at the door, come on and open it up. The video plainly shows the gloved hand of a police officer with the key in the door, and he opens the door and they bust in, and within a few seconds they kill this young man, Amir Locke. And he wasn't even the subject of the warrant. The subject of the warrant was 100 miles away in another little town, and he was arrested without incident. But this boy up here, who was not a resident, but he was sleeping on the couch there, and even though he had a permit to carry and had his weapon with him, well, things happened so fast before he could even become aware of what was happening, he was dead. 9 seconds, 9 seconds, 9 seconds. And now the officer that shot him, Mark Hanneman, I guess, is on that paid administrative leave and that type of thing. And they're going to, they've launched an investigation to see what procedures can be improved and what they did wrong. But the body cam footage of the officers plainly shows what went wrong. They busted in the house, and before they could see what they were doing, they were shooting. And all attempts to justify that just failed the smell test. All right, so, and the no-knock warrant was signed by the same judge that presided over the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin murder trial for killing George Floyd. You see, the system itself, you say systemic racism, or you could say It's a racist matrix. Same thing. Matrix is racist. And garbage in, garbage out. Hatred in, hatred out. And this is the systemic. And this, like I said, this is systemic. It's not personal, but it is systemic. That they treat us like this because it is in the system. And the whole system has got to be changed so that we can begin to approach to something called racial equity. All right. Now, in my last few minutes, it came out this week that Donald Trump had 15 boxes of sometimes classified top secret documents in his house that he should have turned over when he was no longer president. But of course, you know, he never acquiesced. He never said he was not the president. You know, the word that I'm searching for. So he still had these documents, and finally somebody, I guess, must have tipped the federal government off, and they have recovered these documents. And these are some of the same documents that these Republicans gave Hillary Clinton Hail Columbia. Remember, Donald Trump ran on a campaign of lock her up, but yet he's 15 boxes of top secret, I'm telling you, classified documents that he never should have taken off of the government's property. But there they are at his home. So now, the Republicans are singing a different tune. Not lock him up, but so what? You see the difference? And so you and I must be aware of these vagaries. This is systemic racism on the left and systemic racism on the right. It's systemic racism when it's Democrat, and it's systemic racism being practiced by a Republican. It's systemic it's systemic racism when it's conservative, and it's the same systemic racism when it is a neoliberal. And so these observations, I trust you will receive from me and meditate over them, think over them, because it's nobody here to help us but us. And as they were saying about the Brian Flores lawsuit against the 3 teams in the NFL for failure to hire a black coach. Well, it turns out that he has kicked over the bucket and discovered that they are pro-farmer. They don't ever have an intent, and I'm talking about the 32 owners of the NFL team, which are as an elite club as you can get. They have no intention of hiring a qualified black head coach. They merely go through the motion. Bill Belichick spilled the beans by accident to Brian Flores. He thought he was talking to the other Brian, but he said, congratulations to Brian Flores. Then when he found out who it was, that this was the black Brian, black candidate, then he wants to kind of apologize. But of course, the cat is out of the bag. And I'm out of time. And my brothers and my sisters, as you work, as we struggle, as we strain, look, if you're working with somebody and they don't want to respect you and they don't want to pay you, why, don't work for them. Thank you. Out of here, Doc.